door, she said.
Oh, yeah.
Manistee City Council meeting for Tuesday, May 1st, 2018 is now called to order. Councilmember Goodspeed will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. City Clerk, will you please take roll?
Councilmember Cooper.
Yes.
Councilmember Beaton.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski.
Here.
Councilmember Goodspeed. Mayor Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Pontiac.
Here. Thank you all.
City Manager.
Here.
City Attorney.
Here.
DPW Director. Finance Director. Planning and Zoning Director. Public Safety Director. City Engineer.
Thank you. Public hearings, we have none. Citizen comments on agenda-related items. This is an opportunity for citizens to speak to items that are on the agenda. Please come to the podium, state your name and address, and limit your comment to 5 minutes. Are there any citizens that wish to make comment? If not, Mr. O'Malley, if you would step forward.
Thank you very much for letting me speak tonight. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Jack O'Malley. I live in Lake Ann, Benzie County, and I am running for the 101st District Representative. And I just wanted to let everybody know that I was in the running and let you see me and introduce myself a little bit, tell you a little bit about me. I've lived in northern Michigan for 34 years. I've been in the broadcasting industry, radio and television. And for many years, I feel like I've gotten to know this area. Because of my job, I had to deal with the people in many different organizations and try and do the best I could for all those folks. And I've decided to get into the race for a reason that I was born in the Detroit area. My parents were Depression-era kids. Dad was a World War II vet. And I came along when Mom and Dad were a little older, and Dad passed away when I was just a boy. And I always was proud of his service because I know he was. And for lots of reasons, I never served in the military, and that was a great regret over the years because I've seen the camaraderie and the kinship that veterans have amongst themselves and the great service that they've done for their country. And I decided to run and give up my broadcasting career because I do feel that this would be my opportunity to serve, just like I know you folks are doing. But I felt this was an opportunity for me to serve my state and the people of it, and of course the 101st District. So this is my opportunity. Maybe I wasn't in the military, maybe I didn't serve our country that way, but I can do it this way. So those are the main reasons why I got into it. I'm not going to obviously go into any political debate here, but if it's all right, I'm going to pass out my business card so you can check out my website and see what I stand for and what I do. But I am running for the 101st State Rep seat, and I thank you for your time. And if you have any questions or anything, please let me know, and I won't take up your time. I know you're busy. Thanks, Jack. Thank you very much.
Consent agenda. All items marked with an asterisk are on the consent agenda and considered by the city manager to be routine matters. Prior to approval of the consent agenda, any member of council may have an item from the consent agenda removed and taken up during the regular portion of the meeting. Consent agenda items include approval of minutes, cash balances, quarterly financial update, quarterly investment update, notification regarding next work session, consideration of annual Memorial Day Parade, consideration of Manistee Lions Club annual White Cane Sale, and consideration of annual Forest Festival activities. And I would like the consideration of annual Forest Festival activities removed from the consent agenda and made as a regular agenda item. At this time, council could take action to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item E as presented.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski, second by Councilmember Cooper. Is there any discussion? City Clerk, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Cooper.
Yes.
Councilmember Beaton.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski.
Yes.
Councilmember Goodspeed.
Yes.
Councilmember Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Pontiac.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Unfinished business, we have none. New business, consideration of budget amendment 2018-2 for fiscal year ending June 30, 2018. The city of Manistee is required by state law to ensure the actual expenditures do not exceed budgeted amounts. Over the course of the current fiscal year, unanticipated and unbudgeted events and/or council-approved expenditures have occurred. The proposed budget amendment addresses expenditures associated with these events to ensure compliance with state statute regarding appropriations. At this time, council could take action to adopt budget amendment 2018-2 for fiscal year ending June 30, 2018.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Goodspeed, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski. Any discussion? And can we please go over these amendments? I'm mostly interested in what's over and where we're getting the money from and how we're balancing things out, Mr. Bradford.
Well, the reason it's a budget amendment is because it's got to be an approved expenditure. The ending fund balance this year, we expect to rise by about $100,000 in the general fund. That's a reduction from what we talked about a little bit earlier because of two items. Some of these budget amendments and also the proceeds from the sale of city-owned property to go to streets. So those are going to take that year-ending surplus down, but it'll still be north of six figures. Specifically, if you look at the different items, I'll just run through them quickly. They're fairly self-explanatory. In the clerk's department, the previous city clerk retired and sold back her accrued vacation time. That we don't typically budget for that unless we know somebody's retiring, so that was an adjustment that needed to be made. In my department, because we shuffled personnel in January when we restructured, I have a little bit higher health insurance costs, and they're offset by lower health insurance costs in the clerk's department because the employees shuffled back and forth. For the assessor, we have a modest budget amendment for some software that we got a pretty steep price increase for, but it's something that they use daily, and we also use it throughout the city. Municipal buildings, the increase is $39,000, and that's for the $28,000 boiler repair that was approved by council, and also for additional expenses relating to the water damage down in the police department. That has been offset somewhat by the insurance proceeds that we receive, but those don't show up and don't get netted against the expense. They show up as revenue. Municipal marina, we needed a budget amendment for the gasoline and diesel purchase we make because of the pricing and also a little bit greater volume, but those are offset by sales, and we do make a profit on every gallon of gas we sell, so that's actually a positive impact on our bottom line. For water and sewer, we issued a bond this year that we hadn't anticipated when the budget was prepared last year, and we had the first interest payment on that, so we have to account for that. There's also two projects from a previous bond issue that spanned into this fiscal year, although we had budgeted for all of them in the prior fiscal year, so we need an adjustment for that. And we also then are anticipating about $850,000 in expenses for the corrective action plan and for the basis of design, which council has previously approved the bonds for that and also the contract to do that work. That's what we're anticipating those expenses will be by the end of this fiscal year. Finally, in motor pool, when we had the transition from buying the police cars, financing them over 3 years to starting to try to get to where we're buying one a year, we had to make some adjustments in the budget for that. Also, we had one car that was totaled, and that will need to be replaced, although part of that will be offset by insurance proceeds. Are there any questions?
We're still going to end up with a balance, excess.
In the general fund, I'm anticipating about $100,000 surplus, give or take.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please take roll.
Councilmember Pontiac.
Yes.
Councilmember Grabowski,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Goodspeed,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski.
Yes.
Councilmember Beaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Cooper,
Yes.
motion approved.
Thank you. Item B, consideration of approving change order number 1 for the 2018 street improvement project. 2018 street improvement project was bid and awarded to the low bidder Elmer's Crane and Dozer. Council has approved utilizing the proceeds from recent property sales to add more streets to the paving project. The proposed streets include 11th Street from Center to Davis, 10th Street, Davis to Vine, Center Street, 9th to 11th, Ford Street, 5th Avenue to St. Mary's Parkway, and First Street, Cypress to Division. The work is proposed to be completed by executing a change order to the current contract. At this time, council could take action to approve change order number 1 in the amount of $176,605 for an extension of the completion date to July 30, 2018.
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Second.
second it.
I have a motion by Councilmember Goodspeed, a second by Councilmember Beaton. Is there any discussion? City Clerk, please take roll.
Councilmember Cooper,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski.
Yes.
Councilmember Goodspeed,
Yes.
Councilmember Grabowski,
Yes.
Councilmember Pontiac,
Yes.
Councilmember Beaton,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
motion approved.
Thank you. Consideration of applications to boards and commissions. The city clerk has taken action to advertise vacancies on the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, Compensation Commission, Historic District Commission, Housing Commission, and the PEG Commission. Mayoral appointments require a motion, second, and council voted support. Nominations for council appointments do not require a second. After all nominations are made, council votes on the nominees until one nominee receives the majority support. The following applications have been received. For Housing Commission, we have one vacancy, term ending 5/31/23, and one vacancy for resident member, unexpired term 5/31/22. These are mayoral appointments. I would appoint Kelly Thomaswiski, 6993 Valley View Drive in Onekama, to the vacancy ending 5/31/23.
I'll support the motion.
A second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski and a second by Councilmember Grabowski. Is there any discussion? Please take roll.
Councilmember Cooper,
Yes.
Councilmember Beaton,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski.
Yes.
Councilmember Goodspeed,
Yes.
Councilmember Grabowski,
Yes.
Councilmember Pontiac,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes,
motion approved.
thank you. I would appoint James Bond, 273 6th Avenue, number 303, to the resident member, unexpired term 5/31/22.
I'll support the mayor's nomination.
I'll second. I'll second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski, second by Councilmember Goodspeed. Is there any discussion? Please take roll.
Councilmember Beaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Goodspeed,
Yes.
Councilmember Grabowski,
Yes.
Councilmember Cooper,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes,
Councilmember Pontiac,
Yes.
motion approved.
thank you. Notices, communications, and announcements. Item A, a report from the Department of Public Works. Regular part of each council meeting is a report from a cooperating agency, organization, or department. At this time, Mr. Jeff McCullough will report on the activities of the Department of Public Works and respond to any questions the council may have regarding their activities.
Good evening. What's that? All right. So the Public Works is made up of actually several different departments: utilities, fleet maintenance, parks, refuse, and our street fund. The department's made up of the director, deputy director, administrative assistant. We have 19 full-time employees in the streets, parks, and utilities, and currently we hire 11 seasonal employees. The administration consists of Kathy Boyle. She fields at least a couple hundred phone calls every day from residents with just questions, daily inquiries, getting on the brush list, and she does a wonderful job directing people where they need to go. We do a lot of project management for most of the construction projects in the city. This year's projects include the paving contract that you just approved a change order for, the SAW grant that we're working with on asset management for the sanitary and storm sewer systems with Spicer Group, the 12th and Kosciuszko sewer replacement project. We should have a letter this week announcing a grant award for the pilot project to replace some water services, and then of course our wet weather corrective action program. In all, we have management responsibilities in 13 different budgets that total nearly $10 million annually. We do a lot of MDOT and MDEQ reporting and other various state agencies, lots of purchasing and planning, and then we work with developers and various projects and assist with plan reviews on each of those. In the street department, we're responsible for all winter maintenance, various road maintenance throughout the summertime, the sidewalks, all our parking lots within the city, our forestry program, which is trimming trees and removing dead trees as well as planting new ones, our US 31 maintenance contract to not only operate the Memorial Bridge, but also to complete maintenance activities on US 31 within the city limits, and then operation of, again, the Memorial Bridge and the Maple Street Bridge. This year, we have a new plow truck on order, as well as a pickup truck. We plan to advance our sidewalk program. We've had a lot of discussions on that. We're systematically moving through the city. We've got probably 99% of the trip hazards removed from the north side, and now we are working west of Maple and have approached about 3rd Street. And so we'll continue advancing to the south, then come through the center section of town and keep moving through the community. We mentioned our summer help, but they're essential for us to maintain all of the heavier maintenance items throughout the summer season. One of the big things, and I'll talk about this stuff more as we go along, is the Maple Street Bridge and the reimbursement from MDOT, our reduction in salt usage, and then in-house versus contracted work. So in street highlights, in the upcoming 17 months, that literally starts tomorrow, the contractor for the street paving this summer has already been putting up signs. You've probably seen those around town. They are planning to have their milling machine in town tomorrow and start with the 12th and Kosciuszko project, and then move right into the streets that are in the current contract, and then also the ones that you've approved. And so for the next couple months, there'll be quite a bit of paving in town. If you stretch the schedule out and look at what we've planned in our transportation improvement program, there's over $2 million that's been allocated towards street improvements just in the next year and a half.
Can I ask you,
Sure.
when you say street improvements, what exactly are you talking? Are you talking about slurry coat, mill and fill, reconstruction, or are you talking about crack sealing and sweeping and, I mean, what?
The $2 million is specifically heavy reconstruction, which is mill and fill and crush and shape with new pavement, full reconstruction, which will occur on 12th Street, as well as, what am I missing? Yep, as well as the work that we're going to do under our wet weather corrective action program for conveying that excessive stormwater from 5th and Ramsdale to the treatment plant.
Okay.
So it doesn't include the crack sealing. We're do that
Doesn't include
every
the
year.
routine maintenance and all,
Yep.
that's all heavy maintenance items.
That's all new pavement. Yep.
Thank you.
I have a question on Ford. What are you doing on Ford specifically?
On Ford will be a mill and fill, so we'll be grinding off the 1.5 to 2 inches of the current asphalt and then repaving that.
Do you have any idea when that might, target-wise, when that might start for Ford Street?
Because of the change order that was approved tonight, and because of the sewer project that is at 12th and Kosciuszko, they're gonna start over there. They're gonna move to 10th Street, Center Street, and complete all the work on that end of town. And then our conversations with them are, they'll move to 7th Street, then over to Birch, and then move to the north side and get the north side streets.
Will that be done sometime before this fall, or?
The completion dates are July. So yeah, in May and June, that work will be happening.
Oh, okay, so it'll be over by the end of July?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
I have a question about the mill and fill, if you
Sure.
got just a second. When you did mill and fill last year, kind of uncertain of how it was gonna hold up, have you had a chance to evaluate any of it? Well, I'm sorry, that was slurry coat.
The slurry seal, we've obviously been watching it every day since then. It's actually held up quite well. You can see that there's cracking that's occurred in it. It's reflective cracking. And one of the big concerns that I had was delamination. So as those cracks form, water gets in them, if it pops the surface off. We haven't seen any of that. The cracking occurs because we actually sealed the cracks that are down below, and so it's actually a little bit thinner. That's flexible material, but we haven't seen any major issues from it so far.
Thank you.
One of the things that we've been working on for the past 4 years is our sand and salt usage and how we use those. We've gone through extensive training with our staff, and have also purchased, as we're purchasing plow trucks, have purchased equipment that applies sand and salt better. We have a better understanding of the chemical properties of it, when to apply and how much to apply. And because of that, we've reduced our sand consumption by 90% in the community. That's about a $7,000 to $8,000 expense annually. And we've reduced our salt consumption. I was gonna put 50%, but with the last storm we had, it's probably around 45%. When you total that up, that's about $55,000 a year in savings that we're able to put right back into street reconstruction projects without sacrificing any level of service to the community. Another thing that we were fortunate with this year is the sand that migrates during the wintertime along our beaches was not as heavy as it has been in the past years. Normally we have a cooperative effort with the Manistee County Road Commission to bring in their big D8 dozer and level the beaches out. We were able to do that in-house with our equipment. It only took a few days on First Street, and we're about done there. And if you've been down to Fifth Avenue recently, we're probably a day or two from having all that leveled and completed.
What do we do with our excess sand?
Most of the sand that we can, we spread out on the beach itself. Stuff that gets contaminated with dune grass or other material that isn't really good to put out on the beach, where we've got to then clean it back up. In the past, we've stockpiled that for various projects, but our stockpile's full down at our well field. So the past 3 years, we've been trucking it to nearby places that would accept it. The state park has requested, Orchard Beach State Park has requested it the last couple years, so they cleaned out their some of their playground equipment and their volleyball pits. We've taken some out there. We've had a couple other locations that just have holes that they need to fill in with it, and so we truck it there. But kind of the radius that I've been capping it at is the distance from here, or from the beaches to our compost site. So I don't want to get going beyond that, because we can simply take it out to the compost site and waste it there.
We don't supply it to private residences, do we?
We can make it available to them. We haven't delivered any to anybody's house that I'm aware of.
Would we charge for that?
Not if it's a convenient place to drop it off, no. And I can make stuff, available to them that they can pick up on their own as well from the well field. One thing that's important to note is beach sand, because it's tumbling all the time in the wave action. The grains of sand actually round, so they're like little ball bearings. It's not good in building roads and filling trenches and for construction activities. The sand that comes right out of the ground is actually fractured rock, and it has angular pieces that are able to be compacted. So we no longer use it for our construction purposes. This year, because of the reimbursement from the state of Michigan to operate the Maple Street Bridge, we actually have 2 full-time employees more than we've had in the wintertime. So we were able to run 3 shifts, Sunday evening through Friday night, which reduced a lot of overtime. I think it provided a better approach to storms when they occurred through the city, and worked out very well for us. Fleet maintenance, I just did a quick count from our spreadsheet. We've got over 65 vehicles and heavy pieces of equipment that we maintain. We go through the purchasing and scheduling and update that. It's not just on an annual basis. It's something that we're continuously updating and working with the different departments. And then I talked about this, I think at the last meeting, how we've put a much larger emphasis on preventative maintenance and increased our spending on that area. And we're already seeing paybacks by reducing how much heavy vehicle maintenance we need to do. This is just an example of the capabilities that we have on the left-hand side. The front of that picture is the engine from our beach cleaner. Very harsh environment with all the dust and sand down at the beach, and actually blew that engine last year. And we were able to purchase a new engine for about $3,000 and completely install that and swap it out in the shop with the guys we have. We've also been working to upgrade some of our original equipment. On the left is a 1950s vintage welding machine. We just purchased a new one on the right, and so we're being able to maintain the equipment better in-house, but also preventing contracting those services out. When we had that gap, I don't know if you guys noticed when the invoices were coming through, but every time we would call the welder to come in, it was $2,000, $1,500, where now that's all back in-house and we've got a certified welder on our staff. The Parks Department, I won't go into that very deeply because we do a separate presentation for the parks, but just a quick overview. We've got 18 city parks within the city that we do all the mowing repairs, upgrades, and maintenance on. There's 9 public restrooms that we're responsible to keep clean, setting up the ice rink every winter. The beach cleaning, the big beaches get cleaned twice per week. Any emergencies that occur, so the parks are open 24/7. The guys respond to a plugged toilet or leaking water quite often after hours. And then last year we brought in the DDA maintenance contract as well. There's a couple pictures of cold guys trying to spread out the ice rink liner. Under the refuse, the household waste pickup is contracted through Republic Services, as you're aware. We operate the recycling center, which is allowed for mixed fiber, glass, metal, and plastics. We've been trying to in fact, even this week, we've had conversations with Republic where we're seeing spikes of usage over the weekend. Their first pickup of the week for the paper is on Tuesdays. So Monday is usually when I get the phone calls that, hey, the bins are full and they're overflowing. We're aware of that. And I'm trying to work with Republic to see if they can adjust their pickup schedule so that it matches kind of how our public is using that. We also do yard waste collection, which is the recycling bags that people put grass clippings, leaves, and so forth in. We pick those up every Tuesday during the summer months. And then wanted to remind everybody that we're not doing the annual trash haul any longer. It's amazing how many phone calls we get on that, but the once per month bulky item seems to be working successfully.
Hey, I had 2 people tell me today how much they liked the monthly bulk item versus the other was, is that they really got tired of people coming in and picking through and making a mess of
Right.
of the things that they had out there, and they said this monthly bulk item, they can put one item out there, people don't mess with it, and it's a nice, clean process, so I thought that was kind of refreshing that,
Yeah, and I think that as people become more aware of that and how easy it is, I've had staff that have told me, once I realized that the first week of the month I can put something out, after 3-4 months, I was looking around for something, and so once people get acclimated to that, I think it'll continue to be successful. One thing that's new, if you remember a couple years ago, we discontinued the household hazardous waste pickup at the city garage that we did every spring. In place of that, we've been working with Republic to try to do something different each year. Last year we did the tire pickup the first week of June, first Saturday in June, which is extremely successful. We hauled an entire semi-load of tires out of the city, primarily from city residents. This year we're gonna do paint, and so I gave you a flyer. This notice was sent to the newspaper today. It's on our Facebook page and it's on our website. But for city residents, on May 19th, which is just a couple weeks away, on Saturday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., we'll allow residents to bring in gallons of liquid paint. The company that's going to be collecting them, they're going to just put them in bins. That paint gets taken down to a facility where it gets screened, mixed, and actually gets recycled and reused as new paint. Aerosol paint is not included in that. The aerosol paint can be taken out to the county's hazardous waste collection that happens each August. So just wanted to make sure we got that out.
So if we have partially filled cans of paint, we don't have to mix it with sand like we used to in the old days?
Well, interestingly enough, if you take the cap off and you let it dry solid, you can put that in your garbage can any week.
Oh, even if there's
If
a lot
it's
of
still in
paint it?
liquid form, then this would be a good opportunity for you to bring it down to the Armory parking lot and you can get rid of it at that time.
Okay.
Just a very small piece of the pile of all those leaf bags that we pick up every week. It's just incredibly amazing how big that pile gets through the summer season, and then it gets morphed by about 4 times when we pick up all the leaves and stack those. All of our household waste gets recycled into composted topsoil. We make that topsoil available to the public at the recycling center. So we'll keep that filled. Anybody that wants to come in and fill containers, buckets for your own use, there's no charge for that. That seems to be very successful, and we've had to restock that more often as people are getting used to that. And again, the utilities will be a separate in-depth presentation, so I'll just give you the highlights. In 2017, we pumped just under 300 million gallons of water through 53 miles of main. We've got 4 active water wells and the 2 water towers. And in 2017, we also treated 390 million gallons of sewage. The difference in those numbers is primarily stormwater that's still getting into the system, and hence the Wet Weather Corrective Action Program. With that, I would take any questions.
I see, Jeff, even on the plastic and all that, I've seen bicycles thrown in there and all kinds of junk that I don't think should be in there.
Yep, and people alert us all the time when they see abuse at the recycling center. We've been successful lately tracking it down. We check it, but really it's kept pretty clean, and Republic hasn't had any concerns with it. So,
what's the chance of ever getting a recycling trailer in like Catholic Central has for the paper good and actually getting paid for recycling as opposed to paying for it?
we had that conversation a couple years ago, and just recently started having those conversations again to see if there would be interest in doing that. One of the challenges that we have is you've got to load that trailer from the back end, and that parking lot is enclosed, so we have to be able to have a semi drive up into it, drop the trailer and get the cab out of it, and still have room to operate, but we're exploring that actually. Especially after the increased costs that occurred this
But I
winter.
think, yeah, I think since people take advantage of the city's, city taxpayers funded recycling center that don't live in the city, and the increase in volume that we've seen, that, you know, we're gonna have to look at some option so it doesn't keep escalating. It has been cleaner over there, and, I had a question, and I got a pretty prompt answer to it about someone taking a vehicle home that they worked at and used their own recycle as opposed to
They actually
outside.
bought that from their employer.
Okay.
But I happened to have a meeting with, with the head of that outfit the next morning, brought it up, and we were able to get an answer on
Well,
that quickly.
There was a citizen that approached me, he says, what's that organization in another township doing using our recycling center?
Yep, and it turned out to be a resident, so.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
It moves us to consideration of annual Forest Festival activities. Manistee Area Chamber of Commerce has requested authorization to hold the 82nd Manistee National Forest Festival and associated events scheduled for June 29 through June 4, 2018. Activities will include parades, fireworks, hospitality tent, arts and craft show, signage, and much more. At this time, council could take action to support and approve the request to use the city services, parks, and streets for the annual Forest Festival from June 29th through July 4th, 2018, subject to the appropriate department approval.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Goodspeed, second by Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski. Questions and comments? I've got a comment. This Forest Festival runs for an extended period of time. We've been having quite a discussion about the Downtown Development Authority and charges for services. When that conversation first started, my focus in that conversation was recovering the cost for all of the special events that are held by the Downtown Development Authority, where people are supposedly profiting from those events at the expense of city staff. Over a period of time, the list of items and services that are requested for these events continues to grow. And as we struggle to meet budget objectives and such, my concern is that we're expending considerable resources over the course of this weekend for a not-for-profit organization that's going to profit from this at the city's expense. And that concerns me. I know we can't directly support a not-for-profit, but this in essence is the same thing. Last year, the issue was raised, and supposedly a study and a tracking of the time and the resources being expended for this was being made, so we could have some sort of an idea of what the actual cost is to the taxpayers in the city for the Forest Festival event.
The staff has been tracking those, and we are in our, I don't know, 5th, 6th, 7th iteration of a form that we're gonna roll out at the June workshop to discuss with council. And what it would be is when an organization wanted to have an event, they'd fill out this form and what they want, and maybe in consultation with the department head or for the police department, DPW, and decide what they want. You know, how many picnic tables, how many cones, how many barricades, how many this, how many that. And then the department heads would complete it, and then we'd be able to assign a cost that would go along with their special event request. So the discussion that we're gonna wanna have in June is if council is comfortable with the format that we've put together. The other bigger discussion is to what degree does the council want reimbursement for all of these events? Do you want 100%? Do you want 50? You want 20? You want none? What do you want? So that's gonna be all part and parcel of the discussion in June.
I would have a question for Mr. Saylor. Are we able to spend tax dollars on an event that's run by a nonprofit?
I don't think I can answer that as to every event. There are certainly tax dollars that are spent regarding public safety, for instance, that the city needs to provide. And when those events are being held, you know, we expect that we're going to incur greater costs for public safety. I think there's also a discussion that can be had, and legitimately, that the city can make a decision that the expenditure of tax dollars promotes the city and promotes activities within the city. I think, so the other side of the coin is that, yes, I mean, the city isn't able to expend tax dollars to support, just in general terms, a nonprofit organization. But I don't think it's an easy answer to that as far as every activity or event that occurs in the city. And so I'd hate to say that yes to every one of them, just an answer.
Well, it's my understanding that the chamber puts on the parade and the other activities as part of the Forest Festival. And the parade does go down River Street. And having been someone who's attended or participated in the parade for many years now, I can tell you that people are using the DDA district, and they're using the restaurants, and they're looking at things up and down the street. So in that regard, I see it as, wow, the DDA really doesn't have to pay for this festival because we're advertising the city, but yet they're benefiting greatly from the festival itself. So I think it's important to think about that trade-off when we're talking about this.
It's an interesting thought. Because I hear just the opposite direction concerning the DDA that holds the events and stuff is there's want to charge them for it, and they're a subset of our local government. They're not a not-for-profit organization. Their sole purpose is to promote the downtown. I guess I get confused over how we give something away to someone that's not part of our government entity, that is making a profit on an organization, and then we want someone else to pay for it. I agree, we need to come to a common standard that applies to everybody.
Well, I think this is where we need a little bit of education as to what is in the budget, or what our expectation is from the DDA as far as what they're paying, because a lot of that, from what I remember discussions past, is that that's for snow removal. So they do pay a chunk towards city services, but let's factor out certain things that wouldn't apply in the middle of summer to an event like this.
No Forest Festival activity.
Well, if we approve this tonight, do we still have leeway concerning our discussion on charges in June, or is it just a blanket approval for no charge?
Well, I think the responsible way to approach that is that if you approve it tonight and then come back in a month or a month and a half and say, oh, by the way, we want to charge you for it, I don't know that that's doing right by that organization. So I would think that if you were looking at charging, or had thought about charging, it ought to be all discussed tonight in concert with the approval.
But you're not prepared to discuss the prices and the hours expended in the past tonight?
We have an idea, the department heads have an idea of what they've done in previous years, and they could speak to those, Jeff and Tim. Just some rough numbers that we've used in the past.
When we've tracked the time that we've spent for Forest Festival last summer, it was about $500 to $5,200. Probably about 20% of that was overtime. We've actually been working with all of the events, not just the Forest Festival, but honestly, they've been one of the best. Them and the DDA have been the best at recognizing, because we've had this conversation with them each year, recognizing that I need to make whatever I do the most efficient I can. So was that list submitted as part of this? So the list that's part of your packet that's requested from the city, we've been working on that list for 4 or 5 years now, and have been, now it's to the point where we anticipate what's coming. I can do it during the day, I can do it during the week, I can do it with our summer help, and I'm not incurring overtime expenses for it. The only overtime that I directly incur is I have to clean bathrooms 2 times a day during that festival everywhere in the city because it's so busy. And then the night after the fireworks, the beaches are completely trashed, and we bring in a crew to completely clean the beaches before everybody wakes up and gets out in the sun. About 3 years ago, that expense was probably $9,000–10,000.
But is that the overtime that we're incurring on that?
There is some overtime for the two items that I mentioned. Cleaning up, well, actually three: cleaning up River Street after the parade, extra cleaning of the bathrooms, and the cleaning up of the beaches. But it's probably around $1,000–1,200 of the $550–200 we spend.
So you'd guess about 10,000 total?
That's just
Yeah.
DPW. They'll
Okay.
give you the public safety.
Last year was my first bite at the apple with it. So in examining our expenses, I think that we can, my honest opinion, drill down a little bit more and cut our expenses as far as overtime. Just for the fireworks itself was around 2,600, and the parade was about just shy of 2,000. That's including overtime, prep, everything like that. However, just in looking at what we've done, we can probably, cut that down just to try to save on expenses. We don't need to have all hands on deck for both, so that's just my first blush at it.
The tight lines for troops that we approved in the last council meeting, in their application, they offered to pay for overtime for the police department.
Yeah, that's something that in one of the meetings that I had with them, they wanted to have somebody there on site at the tents overnight, which we couldn't provide ourselves just with our on-duty guys. And I said, if you want that, I told them right straight up front, you'd have to pay for those officers. So that's why they've included that in it now.
If I can add to the tight lines, I just had a meeting with them this afternoon for about an hour. Their list grew a little bit. And I sit on a lot of these events just as a liaison to the city. And I can tell you when an event like Tight Lines, there's a new cost that pops up, they try to go out and get sponsorships or donations to cover that cost. I know that the Sleigh Bell Festival does the same thing. Forest Festival does the same thing. So as Tim and Thad and I have been working on this forum that we're going to talk about in I think it's the June work session, what we've talked about is at some point, whatever you decide, I think we need to give some time for these events to be able to plan for it. And I don't know what that duration is, 3 months, 6 months, a year. But I think they've got to have time to react to it and absorb those costs of whatever they're going to be.
As long as you've been working on it, I think since I've been on city council, we've been talking about it also. And waiting for some numbers and waiting for some results and waiting to see some movement. The last thing I want to do is start at zero and move up. I mean, we should be able to start somewhere that's a happy median and move towards reimbursement, because again, the budget doesn't get any easier. Revenue's not growing. I'm not looking to grow revenue out of this, but I'm not looking for the city to lose money in the departments and incur overtime. I mean, we know when the Forest Festival is. What schedule adjustments can be made to kind of compensate for that. Everybody doesn't have to work Monday through Friday, so then I'm sure you have some flexibility with the proper notice in a contract for changing schedule. So,
And we've had these. I mean, there's probably 14 events that we've been doing each year. They may be as small as $50 worth of barricades for the Memorial Day Parade, and some officer attention to that too.
Yeah.
Sleigh Bell and Forest Festival that are the biggest one, and
thousands of dollars.
and there's a lot in between. So we've been making everybody aware that there could be some charges coming forward in the future. I think what we'll bring before you, the form that we bring before you, it lists kind of the true costs from our perspective, but then it gives some options because not every one of those festivals are the same. Some are for-profit events, some are not, some are free to attend, some are not. So there's a lot of variables that occur in those. And from my perspective, those 12, 14 events that we do each year, those are just part of what we do, and it's part of what we do for the community. But this year there's 2 brand new events that one of them could potentially take up a lot of resources for. So we look forward to that discussion.
Well, I'm satisfied with the discussion, and that's why I wanted it off the consent agenda, so we could have the discussion. I'm not looking to punish anyone, or drop a bomb on someone at this point, but I wanna make sure that we are of the mindset to move forward on this, and really get something to look at, something to work with in the future.
And that's been a work in progress, and as I said, we're targeting the June workshop. You know, there was more involved in this process than we anticipated. First of all, we had to adequately track and accurately track all the expenses. And then we had to come up and work on a form that would reflect our costs and reasonable costs and look at all of the different cost centers we had. So we've been working through that process, and we'll have sounds like we'll have a lively discussion in June.
Okay?
I think we have a chamber representative here. You have anything you'd like to say?
Oh, I just want to address a couple of things that you mentioned. That list that we submitted, we'd be happy to revise that and take on some of that stuff ourselves. I mean, I've looked at a lot of stuff that, certain things that we've requested, we can rely on volunteers and maybe see if we can have more individuals help us with that. And just as of, in regards to public safety, we do work with the Manistee County CERT team, that we do give them a donation. We've done that for years to secure the perimeter for fireworks, and then also hire for security at the big festivals. So we do that to try to hopefully that there's not, officers that have to incur overtime for that. So we do take into account a lot of those things. And then we also understand, this is a huge economic driver for this community as well. So we hope that, everyone here understands that. And we don't, it may seem like we make a lot of money off that. We don't. That's, something that helps the chamber. And what we net at the end of the year is pennies. It's not like we're a nonprofit. We're not banking money off this on the backs of the city. We're doing this for the business community, the residents that live here, to have something that they look forward to. And then also for visitors, to attract them to this community. And hopefully that they move here, they live here, and they see what, this does for our area. So just to and I'd be happy to come back in June and kind of have a further discussion, because I have a lot more stuff that I think it may be helpful to kind of provide you more information on that.
I would like you to be involved in that discussion, because I think it's important that you're able to put on these festivals, and that if you're able to help, that you can help. And I think it's important that you're involved in those discussions.
Yeah, and I just want to, if I have a couple seconds, just to put some statistics out there from our Visitors Bureau. In 2016, visitors spent $143 million per year in this area. So if you look at Forest Festival, that's a huge, that's one of the hugest festivals, along with Sleigh Bell, that bring people to showcase our city. So I think it's really important that we continue that. And then visitor spending supports 679 jobs, over 17 million in direct annual wages. So it is creating jobs for this community as well. So putting on these huge festivals do bring people to the area. Hopefully they buy houses, they put their kids into the school, they, open a business, and that, increases people in our city. So with some of those statistics, I thought it was important to share that.
And, I read the statistics, and I'm not anti-Chamber of Commerce. I hope you can appreciate that. But when we go through a budget discussion, and when our historic budget talk about looking at the real prospect of cutting services because of lack of revenue, then we have to look at our revenue stream and what we're providing outside of citizen services. I would hate to think that we get in a situation where we have to reduce services to the citizens to put on events. Could come to that. And I try to be a realist and look into the future. I know the budget's about this next year, but we see the projections going forward with the red numbers on it, and I can't help but think of the following year and the year after when I'm looking at this year, and it's like, I'm not gonna go out and buy a car today that I can't pay for next year. I'm not gonna obligate myself to that and say I'm just fine this year, I'll worry about next year when it gets here. So, that's where I'm coming from with that. And we, again, when I started the emphasis, it was about DDA events, and the list that kept growing and getting longer, as each event happened. But you also look at some of the peripheral events and organizations too, so.
And I mean, I appreciate that, but just being said, it would, for us, because we've already approved our budget for this, and I'm sure a lot of the other nonprofits that have events for the year, just so that we can work that in to our budgets for next year, or understand what those costs might be, or take a look at having more volunteers help us with that, so that we know what we should expect in the future as well. And we appreciate, obviously, all the services from Public Works and Public Safety, because they've been wonderful to provide for these events, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment, if you can. You mentioned that there's some of these things you might be able to get volunteers to do. Would it be possible to maybe work with Mr. Taylor or the DPW and see what you can do?
Yep, I mean, I've marked down on the current list that I've provided that there's some things that we can, I mean, something simple as trash cans in the beaches. We can buy our own and put trash bags in it and have the chamber do that. I mean, those are certain things that I think that we can help different events for.
I have no idea what you had in mind. I just know you mentioned it, and just
yep.
something that
I'd-
would work for you and maybe would take some pressure off. And
Yep, I'd be happy to do that. And then just so everyone's aware, there are 32 events that happen within a Forest Festival. So if there are those expenses, we got to kind of corral the different events to kind of know what each of them needs, because that's something we've tried to streamline for the city versus having all these events contact the city saying, hey, we need this, this, and that. So we've tried to streamline that to make that process easier as well. So we'd be happy to take a look at that list and get with the rest of the events to try to make it easier on the city and understand those extra costs.
working together, I'm sure that we can make it happen.
Yep, we'll do our best.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? City Clerk, please take roll.
Councilmember Cooper.
Yes.
Councilmember Beaton.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Zelinski.
Yes.
Councilmember Goodspeed.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Pontiac.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Item 10, concerns and comments. Citizen comment. This is an opportunity for citizens to comment on municipal services, activities, or areas of city involvement. Citizens in attendance shall be recognized by the mayor for comment, limited to 5 minutes. Letters submitted to council will not be publicly read. Are there any citizens that wish to make comment? If not, we'll move on to officials and staff. City manager,
Nothing at this time.
city attorney,
Nothing, Your Honor.
city clerk,
Nothing, Your Honor.
public works director.
One thing, it was brought to my attention today that USA Today has a contest going on for the best beach in every state. Right now, First Street Beach is number 2. We're being beat out by Pure Marquette Beach in Muskegon. So if you go to the Pure Manistee, basically the website for the Visitors and Convention Bureau, they have a link to that. It's all over Facebook, but go ahead and vote and try to make us number 1.
And you can vote every day, so.
I just checked. You can vote like every 6 hours or something like
Really?
that.
Okay.
So I got 4
There you
hours
go.
to go.
Okay.
Jeff, were you gonna do something about when the construction's starting?
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier, but again, construction on the street projects is beginning tomorrow. So there'll be some traffic delays, but all of the streets will be closed to through traffic as the contractors are working, but they'll be open to the residents to get to their driveways.
Just a quick question. Has Consumers started their project?
They have. The frost laws came off yesterday through Manistee County. So now contractors are starting to schedule to mobilize equipment. And so they've got a lot of stuff prepped over there. And I know they'll have their equipment and big stuff coming in soon.
Thanks.
Planning and zoning. Finance. Public safety. City engineer. Everybody's today. Council members.
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing at this time.
Nothing.
Okay, I've been given the privilege of presenting the cards to people who've been working for the city Randy Hunt for 25 years. Jeff, you want to grab that one? And we have Jamie Tabachka, 2 years. And Gabriel Walker, 2 years. And Chris Fenskoviak, 3 years. Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Beaton?
Yeah.
Pontiac?
Nothing.
2nd of June, it's been in the bulletin, in the staff notes, for a couple of times. Last year, City Council hosted a reception and picnic for city council, city staff members and their families. We'll be doing another one this year. Those that wish to contribute on council or take part in that are certainly welcome. It'll be the 2nd of June, which is a Saturday. Plan to start about 5 o'clock at the Manistee Oaks, and hopefully the weather will be good enough that we can do it on the back patio. But we'll do some grilling. This year we've made it kind of at a suggestion of Cindy Lunkfit to throw in a potluck, bring something, because people like to do that, like to bring something to share with others. But I would encourage everybody to encourage the staff members, and I would encourage all the council members to be there. And again, if you wish to contribute, you can. That there's no requirement to do so. Everybody's welcome. With that, I take a motion to adjourn to budget work session.
Motion to adjourn.
There you go.
I didn't notice he had on shorts.
Okay, budget. What, where are we at with changes thus far?
The only changes so far, Mayor, are to take $1,000 away from the Manistee Saints and give that to the Historical Museum. And then council did not support getting an additional $18,000 from the DDA. So that made a little bit of a hole that needed to be filled, but we got the final numbers, as I mentioned to council, on the health insurance, because we had budgeted going with Blue Cross, and we got a bigger decrease going with priority. So when I put all those numbers through the program, that's about a $20,000 saving, so that offsets the DDA. And then I put the additional money, the little bit of a surplus towards a line item to replace this thing, because I still don't have an estimate. I'm not sure how much this is gonna cost. So the budget's balanced, and those have been the changes that have been made so far. The other change, which affected the general fund and the capital improvement fund, was to swap the $10,000 so that the streets are coming out of the capital improvement fund and the patrol sidearms are coming out of the police budget, which we talked about.
There was some movement today. You were present with Mr. Taylor and Mr. Lepinen and myself at the TIF committee meeting. And I there's significant movement going forward to make some concessions and look at more revenue from the DDA for city services. So, I think it's just a matter of coming together on some of the issues to make some of those things happen. I think, like in the meeting, we're never gonna get to 100%, but we're not gonna be able to stay where we're at.
I think
forever.
that's my opinion, yes.
Okay. And did you find it productive?
Yeah, I think it's moving in the right direction. As I mentioned in that meeting, I'd like to see council and the DDA board be lockstep on their goals and what their objectives are for the downtown, so that everybody's going from the same playbook. And I think if we can accomplish that, we can come to an understanding of what a reasonable basis for reimbursement is, then I think, that's the best way to move forward.
Okay. Let's talk oil and gas investment. I know we just got the quarterly update. Said we had $10.34 million as of the end of March.
I believe that, yeah, from the report.
I ran a spreadsheet. I'll give you a copy of it if you want. Give you a copy of that. I looked at $10.34 million, and I looked at $10.14 million, taking $200,000 away from it. As I set the spreadsheet up, I said, let me assume an 8% rate of return, as we keep talking about the power of compounding it. But let's also look at a 4%.
Can we get that to look for everybody?
I've got another one here if you want.
No, I mean like the, yeah.
Well, we're gonna find out.
But I also looked at a 4% annual spending rule on this. What I found interesting is I've got a mistake on there. It should be 14, and I got two 15s instead of a 14 and a 15. As you go down through there and you look 15 years in the future, if we took $200,000 out now, with where we're at now, and we had an 8% rate of return, and we continued a 4% spending rule, we would be within $350,000 approximately, with or without that $200,000 right now. Down below it runs the 4% spending that would result from the accumulation of the revenue in the oil and gas fund. And I know there's been comments about robbing from future generations and so on and so forth, and how we're gonna wreck this fund and stuff by taking $200,000 out. I also know that, there was a city council resolution which this council can undo that resolution if it wishes to do that. I think it would be foolish to, one of the things this council can't do, or councils in the past shouldn't do, is to tie the hands of councils in front of them, or make rules that take funds away from them, or the ability to impact infrastructure and services in the future. When I look at these numbers, I'm hard pressed to see a great loss. And you know what, the 8% may be an aggressive rate of return, but it's less than the 19% the Community Foundation got last year. 8% seems to be the standard that MERS picks on for appreciation and market expectations on all of their forecasting. But if you see fault with some of those numbers, please point them out.
Well, I'm not gonna sit here today and say whether I need, fault with them. I think that's the general process you go through, but I'd need to look at the spreadsheet and run my own numbers.
Do you guys do a breakdown on if a first 200,000 versus 100,000, what work they would get you?
In terms of the roads that road improvements, yeah.
Yeah.
What we did is, the engineers put together a map of reconstruction candidates.
Which one is that one?
That was on the desk.
We just did a contract for $172,000, I believe, a contract extension. And you see all the work we got done with that? That's a pretty significant improvement. And part of the problem with that is $22,000 of that was engineering cost. So it's kind of like issuing a bond. You're going to have the bond cost and the upfront cost and the underwriting cost, no matter how much you ask for.
So up on the screen are some road segments that are in the red. And what we did is took all the candidates that are, all the reconstruction candidates, we took out of them the ones that need utilities below them, because even if we had the 200,000 or 100,000, we don't have that utility money available to match it and do the utilities below them. So the segments that are in red are reconstruction candidates without utilities below them, and then the cost of that reconstruction project is shown. So an example, for $84,000, you could do a small block of Cleveland between Monroe Street and Quincy. You could do, let's pick another one block of Hastings between 3rd and 4th. There's a block of 2nd Street between Oak and Maple for $160,000. So pretty much when you're talking about a normal city block, you're talking about $200,000. If you're talking about $100,000, then we've got to look for a much smaller road segment. Some of these the prices are driven up also because they need storm sewer work, and the storm sewer work comes out of the street funds, not out of the utility funds.
But what, with $200,000, we're gonna have, basically gonna be able to do about a $170,000 or $180,000, and the rest of it's gonna be engineering cost. Is that not true? If we use the formula that we just used, I mean, we had $22,000 of this bid we just approved tonight was engineering cost.
Yeah, generally about 18% of a construction project like that is in design and construction admin.
Are you including engineering cost in these quotes?
Yes, that's all in there.
Engineering is, these prices are all inclusive,
Yeah.
and some contingency money.
Did you move it back to the north side?
Maybe not.
I may have fried the computer.
I'll go get a
Hey,
paper
Mel?
towel. Just needs to drain.
Probably need another 100,000 for a computer now.
Oh, got a little bit of spill.
He's got
Turn the
ex-
lights off tonight.
We've got extra copies up here of that anyways, so.
Jeff, how would you rate Harrison and compare it to some of the other streets for its current condition?
Well, these reconstruction projects are all in very poor condition. So not only is the pavement in bad condition, it means that the base material below the pavement is in bad condition. So paving them without fixing the base, you're only looking at 6-8 years of life before they start to crack and crumble and go back. So there's honestly streets that I would like Lincoln Street is a very large connector between 31 and Washington Street. But when we did the televising for the saw grand of the sewers, we found that there's a lot of
Some work
sanitary
there,
sewer
okay.
work that needs to be done below.
How about short? You're not saying we're only gonna get 68 years life out of these once we do them, are you? I mean, that would be a reconstruct price or mill and fill or what?
This section, the small section of Short Street south of Fifth Avenue.
It's being done now,
is
right?
to be done this summer. The section between Third Avenue and Fifth Avenue is about $220,000. One of the things I think that comes to mind as a priority for me is on the north side. We need to do some work on these north-south streets, but particularly in this area, we've got, when the sewers were separated on the north side, there was some storm sewer that was extended between Melitzer and Hastings in this area, and it drains out behind the Housing Commission there's some storm that comes up, along Washington and feeds some of the side streets. But there's kind of a gap in the middle where they didn't construct storm sewer, and they simply knocked the bottoms out of catch basins and then sealed them off to the sanitary. So there's ponding literally every time it rains. Not only is that an inconvenience to the residents there, but it also really is bad for the pavement itself to have the base materials saturated. So what we were talking about with the engineers is it would be nice to be able to do a storm sewer extension into a street like, what street is that?
That's Ford, I think.
Ford is right here.
Oh, Ford's there, okay.
The green dots are the ones that need sewer work also.
Sanitary sewer work.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we could extend the storm sewer and then start from the branch off from that, I think it would help that entire neighborhood with drainage.
I think that would be the best value.
Yeah,
Oh,
the other
that's
thing,
not
the other
Florida,
place in town
whatever
where we
it
have a
is.
similar situation is up at the top of Vine Street Hill. We've got tremendous ponding up there, and the more we find catch basins that are still tied in, we close those off. We've got a resident at, I believe at Grand Avenue that, now that we've closed off another catch basin, the water gets right up to their garage door. At some point, you know, we're gonna need to invest and build some storm sewer, rebuild those roads up there as well. You know, in this 14th Street going up to Hospital Hill, just absolutely terrible condition. These reconstruction ones are obvious.
That's the one for 232.
Yes.
232.
That's a pretty good stretch of street
Yep.
right there.
Yeah.
Yep, and it acts as a pretty main connector for everybody up in the Reeds Park area to get down to 12th Street as well.
232,000.
232, and then when it gets up to Maywood, is that 55?
They're different sections though.
So it's probably 300 to get to the top of that hill completely.
Okay. I would take care of the worst part of it though. I think my point is that, you know, we could jump ahead. We've added $170,000 work this year. If we add some work next year, and then stick with what we've got scheduled in the future, we'll jumpstart and get ahead of the game pretty good. I'm of the understanding that asphalt prices and construction cost is at a pretty good rate right now.
They are, and for this season, they've held pretty well. The paving companies buy asphalt on futures, so they lock in a price, and it gives them a 6-month window to be able to bid and build projects. I just talked with a contractor last week. He said they're holding good right now, but oil prices are starting to go up. So they expect that those prices will follow that.
Question? Comments? I would still like to take an additional $200,000 out of the oil and gas above the 4% spending rule this year to add to street maintenance, reconstruction.
Is that something we can vote on today? If we wanted to
Not
do
during
that?
a work session.
Or put it on an agenda?
We would just have
We're gonna vote on the budget on the 15th, so
just council.
consensus.
Yes.
Well, I agree with the 200.
Me too.
Yeah.
I don't have any
Yeah.
problem with 200.
Yeah, we've got a consensus on 200
And I guess next would be the consensus on the street.
for adding to the street rehabilitation. Yeah.
No, but if you're looking at dedicating that $200,000, what street are you gonna use it for?
Well, we didn't have to do that with the property, though. We didn't have to pick a street. Like when we sold all that property, you guys chose that, right?
Public Works, as far as I'm concerned, can pick the
We can pick
candidate
the
street,
ones. I didn't know.
which
I
offers,
was under the impression the council, that's what you were
No, I didn't want a particular street. We wanted to see what the cost was for
And we'll-
segments of streets and such.
We'll pick the streets that we think we need done.
Right.
Yeah, that we can, the closest approximate what we can do for that resource.
Well, I assume that it's like the 14th, between the 14th Street and then the streets on the north side, right?
Well, we'll have to get together and,
Okay, because that's what you guys.
Like hospital, Shaker Hill.
This is one of those opportunities that if council wanted to select a
Yeah.
candidate, you could.
Now, we didn't pick the streets that were added to the contract here. I mean,
No.
That's for the money.
That's too much
Hopefully one that would stop the
micromanaging.
inflow. If you're gonna work on something, work on one that's gonna be the inflow,
Okay.
you know.
we'll have that.
Thank you. Anyone else have any issues or things they want to discuss concerning the budget?
Front end loader. You wanna purchase one?
The what?
A front end loader.
Yeah.
Is the other one pretty much junk, Jeff, or is it?
Actually, the mechanic came to me at the end of the day today. If we don't replace that loader very early in the next fiscal year, I can't even remember the parts. It needs $4,000 of suspension parts to it. They've been holding off on it in case we trade it in, and it needs new tires. May not sound like a big deal. New tires for that loader are $8,000. So I've got $12,000 I'm gonna need to put into that I would do it in, I don't have money in this budget, but I would have to do that in July. The point that we're getting with that machine is, it's got very high hours. It's got 16,000 hours on it. And if I put 12 into it now, it's gonna be 5 in a couple months. It's gonna be 3 more after that. It'll keep eating our maintenance budgets up. And the other interesting thing is, it probably has just based on recent discussions we've had when we traded in the last one, it's probably worth about 20 grand as a trade-in. And when I put the 12 grand into it, it's still gonna be worth 12 or 20 grand as a trade-in. You know, we're not gonna get any more money out of that.
What's the life expectancy of one of those?
They recommend, depending on how it gets used, 10 to 15 years. We use those machines pretty heavy and pretty hard. It's not the same as being on a construction site we use, because it's got a lot of road work and stuff. But we're past what the normal life is on that machine. And like I mentioned, 2 years ago, we had to put almost 30,000 into it to replace all the hydraulic systems and stuff, because we took it past the end of where we should have traded it in.
Any other questions? Concerns? Pretty well set to have a vote on the budget with on the 15th.
We taxed the staff to give us a balanced budget, and they did. We taxed the city staff to give us a balanced budget, and they did, with what, best they could, to our ability. So, yeah, I'm ready to vote.
We can't
Can't vote at a
Can't
work
vote
session.
now.
I know, I said, you said, he just said the 15th.
Yeah, we're
I'm
ready.
just saying.
We're ready to vote on the 15th.
But what I'll do, Mayor and Council, is make all the adjustments that
It's a
Council has
work session.
proposed. I'll include the ambulance fee schedule like we wanted. I am gonna include in the budget adoption amendment, the designated depositories. That was left out. It'll be the same as they are this year. I'm not making any additions or deletions to that, but we talked about doing that as part of the budget. I had forgotten to include that. And I'll make any of the adjustments that we've made and, provide replacement pages, and that'll be ready for the 15th.
Everybody satisfied? Okay, thank you very much. Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Motion.